Stories of time travel have emerged over the centuries. One of the best stories of time travel convinced many people, many of them part of the NYPD, that time travel is not a theory, but real. The case of Rudolph Fentz. Rudolph Fentz is a person who has traveled back in time. History was very famous, well documented. It all happened in June 1950 at 11:30 on Fifth Avenue in New York. A hot day like any other, people walked quietly when suddenly they saw a stranger wandering, completely baffled until he is hit by a car. After this, the police makes an appearance, and after initial recognition, they could see that it was a man in his 30s dressed in clothes of a century ago. It was spotless. He wore a black velvet, a large hat, tight pants and shoes with a buckle. They proceeded to register you in their pockets, and found a handful of notes and coins in perfect condition, with the particularity that these were out of circulation. They also found a handful of name cards. Rudolph Fentz, a letter, which contained a date of 1876 on the postmark of it, and it was addressed to Rudolph Fentz, and some receipts that made reference to an amount paid for the maintenance of horses in the carriage. Hubert Wren Agent Office Missing the State of New York was commissioned to initiate an investigation to find those relatives of the victims, starting your search by immigrants from Austrian origin, German and European descent. They had Fentz's surname, arrived in the United States after the World II era, but all attempts had negative results. When everything was already lost, he found a phone number in a phone book of the year 1939. Which contained a certain Rudolph Fentz Jr. I got to talk to this address and found the widow of Rudolph Fentz Jr. It was the very son of the hit person. The widow said the father disappeared in 1876, when she left to take a long walk in the countryside as used to habitually do, but since that day have not heard from him. This data was completed corroborating when they found Rudolph Fentz on the list missing persons file New York State in 1876. According to the report, gave a leap into the future 74 years from 1876 to 1950. Now come the questions. What really happened to Rudolph Fentz? How has achieved 74 years later appear without having aged at all? I went for a walk and went through a spatio-temporal door. Why on Fifth Avenue? This is one of the few cases where you can prove that a person has traveled back in time. The fact is an enigma, but has traveled back in time is a reality. Andrew Carlson, Time Travelers, Real Cases Commission. Sources: Safety Securities Exchange confirmed that a 44-year-old Andrew Carlson gave a bizarre explanation for his incredible success in the stock market after being arrested on 28 January. We cannot believe the story of this type, or a lunatic or a pathological liar. But the fact is that, with an initial investment of only $800, after 2 weeks had an estimated $350 million portfolio. Every investment made suffered an unexpected and inexplicable rise in value, which cannot be simply a matter of luck. The only way to get these achievements is through illegal insider trading. It will sit in a cell at Rikers Island until he confesses us. Your sources. The stock market disasters last year left most desperate investors. So when Carlson got every one of the 126 high-risk operations that ended in a complete success, profit, drew upon himself all suspected inspectors. Wall Street. If the stock of a company rises like the film due to a merger or a major technological breakthrough, this information, which is supposed to be secret, Mr. Carlson somehow knew in advance, she said. A source close to the investigation said. When researchers questioned Carlson, obtained more than they imagined. 4 hours of a surprising confession that broke all schemes. Carlson said he had traveled to the past more than 200 years in the future, when it is common knowledge that in our era there was one of the greatest stock vagaries of history. So anyone armed with enough knowledge of the values that would rise as the film would make a fortune. It was simply too tempting to resist, claimed Carlson. I planned it so that it seems natural, you know, lose a little here and there so it does not look too perfect. But I was arrested at the time. In a bit long-suffering, Carlson offered to spread historical facts, as the location of Osama bin Laden and a cure for AIDS. All he asked was to be allowed to return to future in his time machine. Either way, refuses to reveal the place where the machine is or explain how it works, supposedly because the technology can fall into the wrong hands. The researchers are fairly confident that the statements the time traveler are false, but do not stop admit that no one can find any previous document under Carlson to December 2002. Perhaps Lun Tycho not until this day have not been found documents of this person. Our conclusion is that actually traveled in time, thanks to a technology that certainly was not his time. Nostradamus. Most of the things that Nostradamus predicted have been fulfilled and others not so much. Our conclusion about this character is that for some reason was visited by a time traveler he should not be very sane, or for some reason had some sort of problem. He told him things that would happen in the future, which made Nostradamus did not believe him at all. However, stamped in writing their named prophecies, many of them true but others directly disparate had as bimental delusions, that could pay seed to the traveler. The deduction Nostradamus could not be true, it is only a hypothesis. The above stories themselves are real, and you can find information about them via the internet to confirm the here exposed.